This is Coffee Break with Jimmy. I was going to do a podcast today on the governor's race here in the state of California. You know, I was going to talk a little bit about Javier Becerra, and you know, he's just a worthless pick. Anyway, I watched a program last night. Was it Fox News at Night with Jimmy Failla? And he had Joe Piscopo on there, and one of the things they were talking about was that Christopher Columbus' DNA came back and he was from Spain. He's not Italian after all. And of course, Joe Piscopo, I guess he's done the Italian, he's been the Grand Marshal of Italian Parade there in New York, and for Christopher Columbus Day, because he's one of their Italian people there that's famous, right? But I'm sorry, guys, but Christopher Columbus is not from Spain, and he's not Italian either. Now, he may be a little bit Italian. I'll explain. Christopher Columbus, well, we'll go back to his grandfather. His grandfather was Juan Gonzalez Zargo. He was a maritime sailor. Him and another guy named Tristan Teixeira and another guy named Bartholomew, they were discoverers, and they discovered the Madeira Islands, which was a Madeira Island and Port Santo or Porto Santo. And then later on, I don't know if they discovered them. I think Teixeira may have discovered the Azores Island. They discovered those in 1433. The Madeira Islands was discovered in 1418. And anyhow, Juan Gonzalez Zargo, when his daughter was in 1450. She was 16, and sent her back to the mainland Portugal for schooling to get an education. And she had been there already a few times already, but back that time they sent her back to the mainland Portugal for her schooling. And she went to school with this Portuguese prince from the royal family. They were both 16 years old. And she became pregnant, and she had the baby in Cuba, Portugal, where she had her son. And because this was a Portuguese prince and they weren't married, well, Juan Gonzalez Zargo brought his daughter back to Madeira Islands, and she raised her son there. I imagine she got married there to maybe this Fernandez, married him. I don't know who she married, but anyway, this was Salvador Fernandez Zargo was her baby's name, and was raised in the Madeira Islands and also raised in Porto Santo or Port Sant. And anyhow, I know when he was a child, and then when he grew up later, he became a maritime sailor, just like his grandfather, Juan Gonzalez Zargo. And so Isabel, his mother, her mother's, Juan Gonzalez Zargo's mother, the great-grandfather's last name was Colum. And so this Salvador Fernandez Zargo had to come up with a pen name. But apparently he possessed some kind of a threat to the rest of the royal family, because he was one of the kids from the royal family. And so he had to change his name, I believe. That's why. So he took a pen name. It was called Christopher Colum. And in English later on, that became Christopher Columbus. So he was raised in Madeira Islands and Port Sant, and he went to school in Portugal, the mainland Portugal. Probably went to school some in Spain also. Maybe that's where they get this DNA saying that he's Spanish, when in fact he's not. Anyway, of course, he became this great sailor and discoverer, and he discovered the Americas in 1492. And this was written about. They wrote about him in the popes, those writings from the popes, they called them the papal bulls. They were scrolls, right? And these scrolls were actually discovered in 1992. That's 300 years later, or 400 years later. Anyway, 1492, no, that was almost 500 years later when these papal bulls were discovered. Anyway, and this Alexander VI at the time was the Pope at the time, and he's the one that wrote about Christopher Columbus, or Christophel Columb. And when he discovered the Americas, the first island that he landed on he dubbed the island, San Salvador. And that was his original first name, Salvador. Now, these aren't, a lot of people think these names of these islands are Hispanic or Spanish from Spain, when in fact they're not. They're Portuguese. Well, Spanish and Portuguese, the languages are very similar. But so when he landed on the island of Cuba, he named that Cuba from his birthplace, where he was born in Cuba, Portugal. That's how Cuba got its name, from Christopher Columbus. That was his birthplace in Portugal. And like I said, these are written in the papal bulls by Alexander VI. And Christopher Columbus, he got a bad name from some people back then that said that he treated the Indians here, the indigenous people here of this land, wrong, when in fact he didn't. They loved him because he would trade with them. He would take stuff that he had and would trade with them here. He would take that stuff back to Europe, and then back to Portugal and Spain. And because he went back to Spain because his fleet was the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, right, that he got from Spain. And so he did a lot of trading back and forth. And the indigenous people here liked him. They really thought a lot of Christopher Columbus. So he got kind of a bad rap by some that said he was bad with them, but in fact he wasn't. But anyhow, I just wanted to get that straightened out to Joe Piscopo and Jimmy Failla, that he in fact isn't Spanish. He isn't from Spain. He's from Portugal. And he may have some Italian blood. Maybe his great-grandfather, where he got his pen name, Christophel Columb, maybe that was Italian. I don't know. But, there's, like anybody else, you have different bloodlines that kind of seep into your bloodline. I believe, and I've checked it out, I'm 94% Portuguese. So the 6% that I have is Scottish and Belgian and different countries from Europe, because back in 1400s, they would exile their bad people in Europe. They would exile them out to the Portuguese, the Azores Islands, and they were governed by Portugal. So a lot of the bloodlines came from other countries there in Europe, and so there was a little bit of a mixture along with the regular Portuguese blood. So, but anyhow, Christopher Columbus was born in Cuba, Portugal, and he named Cuba after his birthplace. And then San Salvador was actually his real first name, Salvador Fernandez Zargo. He named San Salvador after himself. So you can check that out. Joe, I don't know if that makes it any better. He's not Spanish, he's Portuguese. But he's not Italian. But if you want to say he's Italian, hey, I'm okay with that. In fact, apparently the bloodline, his bloodline, actually my bloodline comes from his. He's my 16th or 17th great uncle. Something like that. Anyway, but check it out. Because Christopher Columbus is, in fact, Portuguese. And anyhow, this is Coffee Break with Jimmy. And check out those papal bulls too. They were discovered in 1992 at the Vatican, and this was Alexander VI had wrote about him. So check that out. Okay, this is Coffee Break with Jimmy. Please subscribe, hit that notification bell, share, and press that like button. And I will see you next time on Coffee Break with Jimmy. Thanks.